Hey guys, I'm just live streaming while doing my dishes here in my fabulous kitchen in the south of France. It is a fabulous kitchen and a fabulous apartment, as a matter of fact. Thought was just crossing my mind in starting up this live stream in my kitchen. I'm actually going to live stream while yeah, there, you can see the dishes in the sink. I was reminded of a time, I guess a couple years ago now, when I tuned in to watch Henya. Back when Henya could still kind of talk to me in a relaxed way like a normal human being, which she can't anymore. I was kind of reflecting on that. You know, the overall tide of activity in the vegan YouTube demimonde rises and falls. And of course, it rises and falls on other social media platforms. Like, I was on Tumblr at a time when the vegan scene within Tumblr was really popping. And then it died. I watched it die. And at the moment, I mean, there are seasonal considerations as well. Generally, YouTube dies down during all school holidays. I think that's because a lot of my own viewers are parents. So they're busy taking their kids on vacation. There are seasonal variations. But it's also true that in an absolute sense, right now, you know, the scene is quieted down. There was a time when live streaming, if I popped on #vegan, there'd be 3 or 4 other people live streaming at the same time, talking about veganism or, you know, talking about their lives, but they happen to be vegan, whatever it was. When there was a lot of action, Facebook, YouNow, YouTube, and of course bouncing off other, you know, blogging platforms, Twitter, whatever. And right now it's quieted down. But what I was reflecting on now and just starting to live stream from my kitchen and being reminded of this time when I saw Henya live streaming, you know, what doesn't calm down is the sense of paranoia that this medium seems to instill in people. And, you know, Henya is not the only one. There are a lot of people who are afraid to talk to me. And it's not because they're afraid of me, you know. I think they probably are people who care more about and have their feelings hurt more by YouTube comments, by, you know, kind of anonymous internet comments than I do, because I don't get my feelings hurt by that. They're probably people who care more about courting public opinion, who care more about trying to capture the hearts and minds of their audience. You know, trying to please the crowd, in short. And that's understandable. This is how you make your money. You know, for me it isn't, you know, but there are all kinds of reasons why that's understandable, including the vulnerability to anonymous comments, everything across the board. But certainly in these last couple of months, as you know, there's been a kind of a tide that has lowered, and you see pretty much all boats coming down with it across the whole scene. You know, one of the reasons for the tide lowering, for the level of interest and engagement lowering, is that what we're doing now is not new anymore. And for the audience, when this was new, for a lot of people in the audience, they were hearing these issues being discussed for the first time. Even if they'd been vegan for years, or even if they've been involved in animal rights activism of another kind for many years, a lot of them, you know, I got messages like that directly myself. And I remember having conversations, you know, face-to-face with the people, and they'd say, wow, I'd never heard someone debating these issues or talking about that issue, or, you know, all the different real talk that had to pour out here, including, you know, someone like Henya, talking about her own frustrations with going to street protests, or, you know, all the issues surrounding being vegan. Once you get past the basic questions of how do I get enough B12, how do I get enough protein, you know, all the questions about the meaning of life and the meaning of the movement. A lot of that was new, and it's not new anymore. It's not new for the audience, and it's not new for the broadcasters. It's not new for people like me, right? But it's sad for me to reflect that there's a sense of vulnerability that's always new. And it's a vulnerability that a lot of people exhibit as a sort of paranoia. You know, look, put it this way. I'd be interested in having anyone on my channel talk to me who's interested in making a positive difference in veganism in the next 5 years. I was talking to a guy a couple weeks ago now on live stream, and I said to him, we were having a really interesting discussion about real world activism, street activism, city hall activism, legal activism, political activism, and also some of the YouTube digital demimonde stuff. I said to him, look, you know, can I ask your permission to record this now and put it on YouTube? Or can I have you back as a guest in future? Can we do something for YouTube? You know? And his reply was no. He was afraid of being taken to court. He was afraid of legal consequences. And that fear, you know, it's not totally baseless. You know, I kind of know where he's coming from. And there are other people who say they can't risk their professional reputation. And there are other people who can't even articulate why it is that they feel that they just can't. I said many times, and I said a long time ago, here on YouTube, honesty is the only currency we've got. If we can't come on camera and keep it real and talk about what's weighing down our hearts, what can we do? And why are we here? You know what I mean? And, I mean, sure, I wish Henia and I were still on speaking terms. I have no idea what she's capable of in the next 5 years for veganism, but to stick with her as an example, I wish I had a growing network of highly motivated, highly competent people, whether they're pursuing social media stardom or lobbying City Hall or doing street protests or whatever, you know. I was certainly hoping my Patreon would become a crossroads for people who want to see and create a positive change. I was certainly hoping my YouTube channel would, for me personally, spark a lot of those kinds of relationships. Now, in reality, I have 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 relationships like that have come out of the YouTube, which I really do value, which are precious to me. And some of those people, you know who they are. So, you know, someone like Mod Vegan, someone like Stephen Fight, people I've done YouTube videos with talking about vegan politics. And anyone who watches those videos can tell we're thinking about what kind of positive change we can make happen next few years. That's great. But their numbers are very finite, and they can probably be counted on one hand. And as I say, my point in this video is, look, on the one hand, of course, talent is scarce. You work in any field, talent is scarce. But it's a shame that so much of the talent we've got remains isolated in these mutually invidious scenarios because of a kind of fear, whether you think of that as a paranoia or not, however you imagine that. A kind of vulnerability that's always new, even as we now enter this era in which this message is not new anymore. And we see that in the audience numbers, and we see that in the audience behavior. When I'm talking about my own life, I never run out of material. I always got new stuff to talk about if it's what I'm doing this month, last month, next month, of course. If it's about vlogging, autobiographical material is new. But there's no doubt, you know, there was a time when I talked about vivisection on this channel, I had a bunch of people, vegans, talking to me, saying they had never heard the word vivisection before, which is amazing to me. And they'd never thought about those issues. They'd never thought about scientific research and the issues with animal exploitation and scientific research. Fascinating. Interesting to hear that. Well, lightning doesn't strike twice. My small audience, who got to know me because I opened up a lot of those issues for discussion for the first time in their own lives. Of course, in a library, in an archive somewhere, all those issues have been discussed and debated before. But they were new on this medium. They were new for this audience on the internet. And they were new for people who have largely discovered veganism within the last 10 years, most of us in the last 5 years. And people who have started to think about veganism as a political movement seeking broad social change, not just as a diet, not just as a form of personal purity. Because vegetarianism has been around forever, but whether you know vegetarianism via Hinduism or Buddhism or some other field, the vast majority of vegetarians... I was just reading the other day, Mr. Rogers, the TV actor, he was a vegetarian, but he wasn't promoting or supporting vegetarianism. He wasn't preaching it. He wasn't pursuing it as a social movement. It was just for his own personal private ethics, his own sense of purity or what have you. That's very different. It's really, for most of us, it's just the last few years, within the last 10 years, let's say, that veganism has taken on this horizon where it's not just about you and it's not just about me and it's not just about the diet. It's about ecology. It's about the animals. It's about the future of the planet. It's about our ethics and politics on a social level, on a mass level, right? But the excitement we had in the digital demi-monde, talking about activism, talking about aspirations of the future, that was because for so many of us as broadcasters, as aspiring activists, and in the audience, it was new. A lot of us, if you grew up watching normal TV and not YouTube, you had, a couple years ago, maybe you'd never seen, videos of street activists getting into dialogues with strangers about why do you eat meat? What do you think about factory conditions, slaughterhouse conditions, And now we've all seen it 100 times. Maybe when you first came on YouTube, you'd never seen the videos of the actual slaughterhouse conditions themselves. Maybe you'd never seen the horrifying videos of where does wool come from? How does the wool industry work? There was a time for all of us when that was new because it wasn't on broadcast television and it was here on YouTube. And that created a unique one-time impetus for, this medium to be something exciting and different in our lives and to spark conversations between different broadcasters, between different channels. And that is gone. It's never going to come back. Lightning doesn't strike twice. And as I say, it's a shame that the sense of alienation, isolation, and frankly, to some extent, this feeling of paranoia, I guess because ultimately people are afraid they'll be exposed. They're afraid they'll have their feelings hurt by mean comments or, I don't know. They'll be defamed or slandered. Somehow this will come out. Or they'll be dragged into court, as I mentioned that example. It's a shame to see a digital platform that should be a crossroads, that should bring people together, that should spark bigger and better and broader organization, instead keeping people isolated in that way and for that reason.